Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're checking out D-Shift. While not the strongest deck, it's still something fun to play, and this one includes one Rite of Exorcism, one Witch Bolt, and only one Fiery Embrace, mainly just for different situations. So Witch Bolt being a 4 damage is solid against most drops now, and draw a card if you haven't evolved is fairly good as well. The Rite of Exorcism being a good way to remove amulets if necessary with the Enhance 5, if not just removing a 3-point follower for 3 or a much larger follower with the Enhance as well. And of course the Fiery Embrace being a pretty good standard can be subtracted due to spell boost and destroy an enemy follower. Everything else is pretty stock standard and hasn't really changed at all. Actually, I'm pretty sure nearly this entire deck is constructed before Wonderland Dreams, at least in the style, but there wasn't much that was given to D-Shift as an extra thing from Wonderland, so we'll get right into some games. So, the first game is against Haven. The optimal starting hand that I try to look for is super early drops that include the 1 to 2 drop spell range, and maybe a D-Shift or a Flame Destroyer, maybe. Sometimes I tend to look for those. It really depends on the matchup. Against Haven, looking for those sort of cards is really good. Having a D-Shift along with a couple of 1-drops that you can kind of throw down, and the Kaleidoscope Glow that can return things like this amulet here is always quite good. Although this hand isn't the worst, it's also not the best. We don't really have anything that can be spell boosted, meaning that anything we play here is actually quite weak, which is why I didn't play the Angelic Snipe for 1. Luckily though, the Lu does pull us the D-Shift, meaning every card here now actually gives me something. So that's not so bad. This matchup was actually pretty lucky overall. I had a pretty weak overall game up until the final moments, which you will see here. So just pushing out the spells as much as possible, trying to control the board, not too worried about health total. You can normally deal over 20 health pretty easily once you do get to your D-Shift turns. Sometimes you don't, but that's just luck, I guess. So we get to Merlin. Merlin's a card I tend to personally overdraw with. In this case, I think I did. I can't remember whether I do. When I attack and I draw into 9. No, we only went to 8. Okay. So sometimes I will occasionally boost my hand to 9 and then overdraw my next card, but normally when you have 9 cards in hand, most of the time everything is useful and can quite easily be played out in the following turn. So losing 1 overall card isn't always the worst. It's not good, but it's also not the worst, so that could happen to you. Alrighty, so we have fairly stocked up hand, nice amount of spell boost now, and we've got plenty of removal, which is always good, and we can kind of just hit them. So I put the 1 on the follower there just so the magical card, which one? This one? I always forget what they call when I play a missile. Magic missile. So I was thinking magic bullet, but that's not right at all. So that can then deal with it pretty effectively while drawing us an extra card, which happens to be Flame Destroyer, starting to set up for our combo. We're going a little slow. I would normally like to be a little ahead by turn 6, because you can D-Shift, you know, turn 7, turn 8. Sometimes even earlier if you do optimal hand, but I am also not the best D-Shift player and won't make optimal plays, just because I don't have that experience. I tended to lead towards the Daria or Burn style decks when I was playing them over the D-Shift decks. But our hand is okay. The Rite of Exorcism dealing with this big threat, which is, like I said in the beginning, is an alright way to use that. And then we draw our Fiery Embrace, kinda shitty to draw it now, although we can lower it pretty quickly. So, threatening me very, very closely with all this damage. Has to try and find a way around it all. I believe we draw into Levi, which puts us at an okay spot, being able to trade with at least a couple things here. Not too bad. Does leave us in a really tight spot though, with only 2 health once we clear off what we can. But we're pretty set up for a nice D-Shift Flame Destroyer coming up very soon. And with enough luck, maybe even a second D-Shift, which won't require too much luck because the Flame Destroyer and D-Shift can be dropped by any 2-drop there, like the Kaleidoscope Glow, which unfortunately we do only have one target for, but probably just go with something else as a better option here. So we get to the Time Worn Mage. Why not? Drop our D-Shift a little earlier, just to drop more cards. I could have played the Kaleidoscope, had the Evolve, drawn a card. Probably would have been a little better than doing it this way, but still worked out in the end for a lethal amount of damage coming up in the next 2 turns due to the dimensional shifts. I don't think they expected to get completely walled like that once they played their Aegis. But I do have a good matchup against Haven just because of how D-Shift functions, so not too surprising. And so the next match is Shadow, and the one after that is also Shadow. This guy had a pretty sweet Rage Emblem, which I actually really like. Wish I could have had that. We are going second, which with D-Shift is, depending on your hand, good or bad. We do drop the Fates and Missile, which I think was kind of a mistake, dropping the Fates and the Missile, but we do draw Sorcery and the Dimensional Shift, which kind of makes up for it, I guess. Fate's Hand is usually pretty good, so I probably should have kept that, but we draw into it anyway. So fortunately, the luck of the RNG goddess has smiled down upon me and given me a pretty optimal hand. Double D-Shift, great, that means there'll only be 1 shift apart. And with the Dimensional Shift, should be able to lower them to basically the same cost by the time they are playable. Now it's just a matter of surviving the board repeatedly, which fortunately we haven't seen much from the Shadow player. But who knows, we may die, we may survive, we may just get completely walled. Well, I know we survived, but how much we survive by, that's always the entertaining part when I'm playing D-Shift. So we just have to eat crap because they just walled out the entire board with followers. Great. The one thing that's difficult for me to deal with is mass amounts of followers. Things that can fix that, maybe the, what is it, the spell that just does area of effect damage. It's really nice. I forgot what it's called now. Anyway, we'll get on to that. We've got the Freshman Lou, you know, Freshman Lou drawing us our spell boostable cards, things like Fate's Hand. Fate's Hand is probably one of the best cards for D-Shift, personally, outside of obviously the D-Shift and the Flame Destroyers. It's just such amazing synergy with everything. Being able to draw 2 and drop cards, and be at 0, so that it's basically a free drop. And it works in other decks other than just D-Shift, which is nice. So, they keep flooding the board, making things more and more difficult on me. Just being a right around pain in the ass. Luckily, Time Worn comes to our rescue though, being able to gain us a 2-card advantage. Would have been 3 if I had played this right and used the Witches first, but it's a fine. So we get an okay hand here. We have plenty of removal left. Now it's just a matter of not being completely demolished by something like Hector if it comes down. So dealing with this board is kind of important here, but also not very easy for me to do with the current cards I have, just due to the fact that I can't hit multiple things that effectively. We do have another Time Worn, which allows us to kill at least 2 things in the next turn, well sorry, 3 things in the next turn, along with the other Crimson Sorcery. And as you saw there, I did burn a card because I had too many in my hand. Like I said, that can be quite a regular occurrence. So the Time Worn doing its little work, killing off whatever I want it to kill off. And D-Shift is now within a playable range of 7, so next turn it actually has some viability. But unfortunately, because of the board, I decided to Crimson and then D-Shift, I'm pretty sure, yes, because I don't have any other option here. If I had have left it, the risk of dying was a lot higher. If I didn't leave it, then at least I had a chance to drop more killing cards, such as Fiery Embrace and the Wind Blast, which worked pretty effectively, and then just Magic Missile to the face for 1 damage, And of course, we draw Angelic Snipe, which would have been nice if we had have actually hit the zombie. Fortunately, we hit the face, so that was a little mistake. But we now have D-Shift, Double Flame Destroyer, Merlin's Fates, and the Angelic Snipe all within a really, really good spot. So as long as I didn't lose in this turn, I was pretty right. The only real threat would have been Hector, and even then they still needed more damage. So we can start setting up with the Angelic Snipe, dropping the Fate's Hand, getting as much damage as we can to their face, while we set up for the Double Flame Destroyers, the Merlin, and much more. Plus we do have the Double Wind Blast, which if we had have needed it in the next turn, which I don't believe we do, because we actually have lethal pretty easily here. And they can see. Okay, so the final game, like I said, was also against Shadow. I didn't get much variety in my matchups. I think I versed like 4 Shadow decks, 1, 2, lost 2, versed like 3 different other decks, and just didn't come up against much in variety's way, unfortunately. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes you get unlucky and you can't get the variety I want, but after spending an hour trying to get decent games, then these were probably the best I could do with D-Shift right now. So hopefully you guys enjoy them. So our hand was pretty subpar. The double dimensional shift is good, but other than that, we haven't really got too much. Luckily the Freshman Loot and the Kaleidoscope are effective for the first couple of turns, so why not be able to play those, I guess. And the Sorcery Cache, obviously being a 3-drop, is pretty good too. So we do draw a double Fate's Hand as well. This is actually a lot better hand once I get those. Being able to use 2 Fate's Hands that will probably cost roughly 0 by the time they get played. It's just an amazing combo. Plus I'm able to deal with the board with that Angelic Snipe. Not having to worry too much while dropping both D-Shifts down a reasonable peg. Unfortunately, I can't do too much against this Attendant at this stage, unless I draw it into a Levi, which I think we actually get pretty lucky and draw into. Sometimes you just need a little bit of luck. So, the Levi allows us to get rid of this 3-3 and the 4-4 that procs out of it, while spell boosting all of the cards in our hand, which is a 4 spell boost, putting both the Fate's Hand in a playable range. And I decide to drop one of them, just getting a couple cards while we had that 1 extra point of play point available to us. No point wasting the play point there. And this time holding the Fate's Hand so that I can actually boost things in the following draw instead of accidentally being dumb and using them on the initial draw. And making sure I don't accidentally overdraw at the turn that I don't want to overdraw. Which happens to be Witch Bolt, which I fuck up majorly because I'm absolutely useless when it comes to thinking about how I should have done my order of operations here, and immediately ram the Lou after the evolve instead of playing the Witch, which gives me the extra draw. So that was unfortunate. Luckily not a huge deal, but sucks that I missed that potential draw, which probably would have been a Levi and something else. So we've got a D-Shift at 8, D-Shift at 10, we've got both Merlin and Levi in our hand. Unfortunately we don't have any of the Flame Destroyers, which are pretty key to getting this combo to go off effectively. Now opponent floods the board, completely dominating me. And finally we see a Flame Destroyer. Now it's just a matter of surviving at least one more turn to try and drop these down to a reasonable spot. Luckily we do have plenty of things to get rid of things. Unfortunately we don't really have an effective way to deal with everything and have to take a little bit of damage. So the next turn, the Angelic Snipe is fairly effective, being able to drop all of our cards along with the Insight, which is another effective one, giving us basically +4 on all of those, I believe. Or +3, sorry, because there's 3 spell boosts. Which this literally opened up my lethal. Being able to D-Shift this turn, deal 9, and have D-Shift playable in the next turn. And I do go for a little bit of overkill here, a little BM, never hurt anybody. Except for the guy that I just smash in the face. before playing this final D shift. And that rounds out the deck. So this deck is alright to play. You get some good swing turns like you had seen. Other than that though, I had little success with it, only because I'm not a great D-shift pilot. I'm sure with more experience I could definitely get this deck to work a lot more effectively, and I'm sure some of you guys can as well. So hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, you'll find deck list in the description below. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.